Good morning. A warm welcome to the Humanist community in Silicon Valley Sunday Forum to those joining us this morning. My name is Ray Sunby, president of the Humanist community. The Humanist community is a chapter of the American Humanist Association. Humanism is a secular and reality-based philosophy of life that affirms our ability and responsibility to lead ethical lives of personal fulfillment that aspire to the greater good. We value freedom, health, happiness, fairness, compassion, and using science and reason to acquire and apply knowledge. If these words describe your thinking, we invite you to become a member of the Humanist community if you've not yet done so. A special welcome to those who are with us for the first time. We invite you to continue listening to our weekly forums and other events. Please aid us in continuing to present these forums by donating to the Humanist community. Membership forms, a list of upcoming events, information about donating to the Humanist community, and other information can be found on our website, www.humanists.org.
Today we are honored to have Nadya Dutchin with us. Nadya Dutchin is the new executive director of the American Humanist Association, so she is our boss, basically. With more than 10 years of community management, strategic partnership, youth program development, multi-method fundraising, and change managerial experience. She is new to the humanist movement and is working to transform the AHA and the humanist movement into one that focuses on protecting civil rights and building a more youthful and vibrant humanist community. She currently serves as the board member of the Common Good Generation and is the new board president of Our Climate for Education. Nadya is of Guyanese descent, I hope I pronounced it semi-decently, and a proud alumni of Florida A&M University, where she studied molecular and cellular biology. She loves the Muppets, reading fiction, supporting local restaurants, visiting museums, the thrill of live music, and most of all, watching movies and cuddling with her daughter. Please give a warm welcome to Nadya Dutchin.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Where you are, it's morning, it's afternoon for me. Good morning, good morning. Thank you so much for inviting me to join you today. I would like to just introduce myself to you properly. I use she, her pronouns. I live here in Baltimore, and you had it right. My parents are from Guyana, formerly British Guyana, so I'm of Guyanese descent. I, generally speaking, don't do presentations because I don't like talking at people. I like talking with people. And I think that's a really important part of leadership and of collaboration. So I would like to just kind of give you a quick brief update on what's going on at the AHA. I'm going to place in the chat the annual report. I do encourage you to read it at some point. This is the annual report from last year. Since I was not here last year, I cannot comment on much of it, and I did not contribute to much of it. So this is the last year that Roy was at the helm of the organization. Nicole Carr, our deputy director, was running the organization in his absence while the search was going on for me to join the organization. So I started in December 1st of last year. And it has been like drinking from a fire hose for the last 4 to 5 months. I finally have settled in. I feel like I've gotten in and I'm able to take my shoes and my coat off a little bit and relax. And I've started to get to know folks in our various chapters, some of our chapter leaders. I've met with many of our, and I call them movement elders, and I say that from a place of reverence in that they are like past executive directors of the AHA, of other people who helped to build the organization over the many, many decades before I was alive and when I was a wee small child. And I've had the opportunity to get to know a lot of really impressive and wise people who've given me some great advice and who have given me a lot of history of the organization, which has been interesting hearing like the same story from like 5 different people, getting everyone's perspective. I think that's pretty interesting just to see how people, will narrate a position, a story from their vantage point. But I'm coming to the organization with a lot of professional experience. I have not identified myself as a humanist, even though I acknowledged many years ago that I was. I just never took further action because I didn't know that there was further action to be taken. So while I heard a commercial, I was leaving for work at like 5:30 in the morning, going to work in DC, and I heard a commercial, and I was like, "Oh, that's me. I do that. That's me. That's how I feel. That's how I raise my daughter." Even going as far as to say, we don't need God to be good people. We can, we can choose, what we do in this world, and it's better. We have to make every choice that we can to leave it better than we found it. And our job is to be kind and compassionate and to be thoughtful, but more importantly, to bring solutions to situations. And that is my general life approach. So I have worked for my career started in healthcare nonprofit per my education. And then my many years of working in the hospital, in a clinical hospital setting. So I was a med tech and a phlebotomist for many, many years. That's how I paid my way through college. And it took me a little longer than most people because I had to work my way through school. But I enjoyed building community. And most of the departments I worked for were in community engagement. So it was really community building and movement building. I've taken a lot of that experience, and I worked in sustainability with an organization called Groundswell in DC. It's a community solar nonprofit that helps to build power with local communities to support community solar projects, particularly that advantage low income folks. The Washington D.C. government actually subsidizes free energy for folks, so that more than half of their bill is subsidized, so they don't pay that, which is really important when we're talking about energy equality, which is really, really important. Energy justice is something we don't generally think about when we think about justice, so to speak. But behind housing and groceries, it's the next biggest bill that most families have, particularly low-income families that are struggling to pay that. So addressing that inequity was really important. Leaving that organization, I went to an organization called Powershift Network, which is a climate justice organization that trains organizations that believe in building leadership skills in young people. And so most of the people we work with were youth climate justice organizers. And one of the things that I did there that I thought was an important nuance to bring into the picture is that, climate justice is probably the issue of our day. And I say probably knowing that it really is the issue of our day. Climate justice cannot wait. But one of the things we don't talk about when we think about climate justice is the effect it has on people, the actual real lived effect it has on people. We know that fossil fuel fired power plants are the biggest polluters, and behind that are the military, particularly the United States military. And so there's this interesting imperial corporate interplay happening that we need to parse out when we talk about climate justice and we talk about the intentional environmental racism that happens within the United States and around the world. The people who contribute least to climate issues are the people who are most affected by it. So it's something that we really need to think about, not just how do we stop polluters, but how do we also shore up people and who are being affected by climate change and climate migration. We already have climate migrants in our own communities, as you all well know. I mean, the community of Paradise, just down the road from, or up the road from wherever you all are. Most of those folks, I don't know that they've gone back and been able to rebuild. I'm hoping someone has, but most of those folks left, and they are literally climate refugees. They're climate migrants in our own country. So we're going to continue to see more and more of this. There's a huge human impact, because of climate change and environmental racism, and we really need to do all that we can as a society in general, at large, but particularly as humanists. You may have read some of the things that I've put out quite a few things, my welcome, my hello to the movement. And I do a staff note each month. And one of the things I'd love to address is the fact that, when I came on board, Nicole kind of, very quietly told me that there are a lot of people who are a little sensitive around the term social justice. And I want to make sure that I I get that. I understand because I talked with someone who has been a donor for one of the adjuncts for many years, and he said, "Sounds like you just want to just throw things at the wall and see what sticks." And I was like, "Absolutely not. That is not the way anyone should work. That is not an effective way to work, regardless of your industry." We have, as a movement and as an organization, have been spread really thin, and that this is the information I'm gathering from our staff. That staff had been doing lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of things, and not doing them as well as they can, but not to the point of impact. And I would like us to narrow down the scope of work that we do so that we're doing 2 or 3 things as a staff and as a movement, as chapters and affiliates, as members, and that we do them effectively. And then once we get those balls rolling and we get them in a nice place where they're, moving on their own, then we can address, what the next 2 or 3 buckets of work are that we want to address. And when I say buckets of work, I'm thinking niche. So one of the things that that are probably the most important thing to me as a leader, as an executive leader, is building a really healthy staff culture. And I say that because it's not simply just important for staff, but it's important that we model the behavior that we want to see in our movement. And we have to do that internally first. So when I started in December, I really took a very critical bird's eye view at the organization. And I mean, just the staff, the organization itself. And looked at the salaries, the benefits, and all of the way that we've been working, and it has not been, I believe, up to industry standard. Even in the nonprofit world, it's very different when you work corporate versus when you work nonprofit. We have to manage our expectations in the nonprofit world, but if we're going to hire and retain really, really talented staff, we have to have the kind of benefits and the staff culture that works best to do so. So one of the first things that I did is really is bring on some additional benefits for our staff to ensure that we can encourage younger people to join our organization, and other people who are seasoned, also seasoned professionals, but that so that they feel comfortable and they have the resources to build and maintain a strong family. There's not enough of that support. I have worked with young people, and when I say young, I mean like in their 20s and teens, who are deathly afraid of even having children. They don't know how they're going to pay for kids. They know daycare is expensive. They don't know how much diaper and formulas cost. But it is really, really cost prohibitive to have kids, given the fact that they're burdened under student loans and really just the amount of money that they're not being paid versus the cost of living in the places that they are. The gap, that wealth gap is or income gap rather, is pretty sizable, and it's very difficult for them to just make ends meet. So I don't begrudge them their lattes and their avocado toast if that's the only joy they're going to get in a week. But it makes me really sad to know that they don't see a way forward for them to be homeowners or for them to have families. And so bringing in benefits that support that kind of cultivation and nurturing for our staff and their current families and their potential families was really important. So I did that probably within the first couple of months, bringing on like flex spending and dependent care, long-term disability, short-term disability, life insurance. I would hate to see a member of our staff have to have a GoFundMe if something were to happen to them or their loved ones. Also raising their salaries. They were incompatible with life in the district. Washington, D.C. is extremely expensive to live, and we were not even paying a living wage. And a living wage, in my opinion, is closer to $24, $25. If it's kept up with inflation, that's where it should sit. So our lowest paid employee is now at that, at actually just a little bit above that level at this point. And so, I can't in good conscience be paid the salary that I have, and my staff can't live on their own. It's unconscionable, and I couldn't, I can't lead in good conscience doing so. Once I did that, I was able to, start talking with our many folks in our communities, meeting with our, former leaders and many of our major donors to find out, their curious needs. And one of the most important things that I did in March is I actually flew in all of our staff for a staff retreat. Do not worry, we were all masked, we were safe. I made sure that we were, we were all in the same place, but that we kept ourselves safe, that we had COVID tests for everyone. We had copious hand sanitizer and other things. The only time we were unmasked is when we ate lunch, and that was normally done in dispersed areas or outside. Um, but I think it was important to do that so that we can build our culture together and identify who we want to be. It was interesting, like, who is the AHA, and hearing the staff talk about like what the AHA as an organization, as a workplace was like, was very, very illuminating. Again, hearing, quantity over quality was an issue, not necessarily having thought partnership among themselves and with their leader. And Roy was an amazing leader. And I'm not sure if any of you know, but he's now the president of the Humanist Foundation. So he's over the endowment, which is the perfect place for him. He's an amazing fundraiser. He's an excellent leader, and he knows the ins and outs of the AHA, and he loves the organization and wants to see it be able to be supported into perpetuity. So placing him, not placing, but, pushing him gently to move into that spot is a really, really great move, and I'm so happy that he's there. But I'm just a different leader than Roy, and Roy was a good leader, and I would hope that I'm a good leader in my own right. I believe in thought partnership. I believe in collaboration, and even though I have a title that's a bit loftier than theirs, my staff can count on me to talk with them about anything and literally talk them through any kind of ideas that they might have, because I need them to know that they're supported, and to know that their ideas are valid, and even the ones that we may not necessarily act on, we can bank them and use them later on. But our staff are smart and they're brilliant, and they've been in this movement for a long time, much longer than I have. So I trust their expertise. But the staff retreat was really about identifying who we want to be and the kind of work that we want to do together. And so we are getting ready to have another 2-hour follow-up to really discuss the buckets of work. Now, I am leaning in, I'm hoping that the staff will want to do more work on repro justice and healthcare access for women and families. Reproductive justice is not just about abortion, it's about, women's healthcare in general, which is sorely lacking. And I speak as somebody that has literally got done yelling at a bunch of doctors about my health. I've been asking for a certain type of doctor's appointment for ages and ages, and I finally got one when I had a CT scan and something funny came up, and I was like, "Ooh, that's not good." But folks don't listen when you tell them that something's going on, and they most certainly don't listen to women, and they most certainly do not listen to Black women, and it is and brown women. So it's been a very difficult thing to deal with at times. So I'm hoping our staff will choose to work on repro justice. I'm certain that in this election year, probably voting rights will be one of the other things. And then I think clearly climate and environment will be probably the third bucket of work, but it's not up to me. It's up to our staff to decide what work that they feel really passionate about and what they wanted to lean into this year. I will say that one of the culture pieces that I think is most important that we don't talk enough about is disability justice. Lots of folks don't know anything about it, and many of us that have disabilities don't. I guess we don't even have the tools to acknowledge that we do, or the support to acknowledge that we have disabilities, even if they're unseen. And as our movement is growing, getting a little bit older, accessibility is going to be really important. So if you go to our website and you click in the upper right-hand corner, there's a button that says accessibility tools, and it can change the way the website looks for your eyes. It can read the text out to you in 34 different languages. It can convert, it can translate it into 101 languages. So the text can be converted into a different language if you are not a native English speaker or have other language challenges. You can, if you're neurodivergent or you got any kind of like scotopic sensitivity, you can change the background of the website. You can remove the pictures. We're working on the hover. Like if you hover over a picture, it should read to you what's in the picture. We haven't had an opportunity to actually narrate those yet, so be patient with us. We're getting to it. But it's important that we talk and live with those who are most vulnerable in our society in mind. And that is a grounding principle for our organization at this point. Just like, I'm sure if you've worked in any kind of particular, if you've worked in sales, you'll know that, everyone should have on their marketing and fundraising, their marketing and PR hat all the time. You always look for opportunities to market. You are the best representation of your company, yada, yada, yada. We've all heard it. But also, in nonprofit world, everyone should have on a fundraising hat. We should all be looking for opportunities to fundraise. So those are, grounding principles generally in the nonprofit world. And then the third, in my opinion, should be, being mindful of the abilities of others around us and ensuring that we ourselves and the materials that we generate for our community are accessible to people, which is why you heard me say my pronouns, because I want to ensure that if anyone has a preferred name or pronouns that they would like me to use, I'm a safe person for you to share them with, and I will respect your choices and call you how you want to be called, because we should respect people in the ways that are meaningful to them. So I think getting back to the piece about social justice, I think, folks tend to be a little bit scared. Now, I'm assuming that would be present company excluded. But folks tend to be a little bit, scared of the idea of social justice. And these are in the latest Humanist Manifesto. It is one of the grounding principles in our manifesto that we should be social activists. And so we're not trying something new. We're getting back to our roots. I believe this was actually there was some version of it in the second and probably in the first also. But I've been taking the time to remind people that when we talk about social justice, we're simply talking about civil rights. And given the crazy activities of the last week and a half, I promise you I've been nauseated this entire week, just seeing we knew what was coming with Roe. We knew that this was in the works, particularly with Amy Coney Barrett and Kavanaugh. If you know how to read people, you knew that they were lying through their teeth when they were in their Senate confirmation hearings. And I was just like, oh my gosh, here we go, and it's going. And there are so many things weighing in the balance, even more than our right to choose and the right to privacy and our bodily autonomy as women and as people who give birth. They are going to come for same-sex marriage next. They are going to come for free speech, and they are already doing their best to erode. And who does that affect? That affects our community prominently. It also affects religious minorities who have as much to lose as we do, particularly to white Christian nationalists who are the scourge of this country at this moment. I'm reading Andrew Seidel's book, Founding Myths. It's great. I'm only on chapter like 1 or 2. the preface and the foreword and all the other things have been very informative already. But I'm reading that. I also have Anthea Butler's book that's essentially on the same topic. It is probably one of the greatest threats that we have against us in this country is white Christian nationalism. And so in order for us to really attack that, and I say attack because I feel like our people like us, kind, free-thinking people, tend to be on the defensive more often than not. And I think what we need to do is get on the offense. I think that it's a two-pronged approach. One is to continue to do what the AHA does very well, which is work and lean into policy positions and fight in the courts. And those are two things that we are equipped to do and that we're really, really good at. But the other piece of that is really building solidarity and mutual aid networks on the grassroots, because in the meantime, while we're doing all of these very, very technical and legally adept moves, we need to be thinking about, again, the human impact of what's going on. How are we supporting people financially? How are we supporting them materially with resources? How are we supporting them with our bodies? And this is the one thing that I have heard most from many of the chapters that and chapter leaders I've spoken with in the last couple of months, is that folks really want to get more active. And there are a lot of chapters that are really busy. that have they've got their Sunday activities. They've got some meetups through the week. They have a food pantry that they stock. Some are gearing up for the food drive or the back to school drives, and in the late summer and the fall. There are so many chapters that are doing a lot. But there are a lot that are really struggling right now. Like we have 16 people here, including myself. But there's some folks that can't get 5 people to show up for any activity, and so we have to think a little bit about how do we get new folks into these organizations or into the chapters and affiliates. How do we attract new folks, and how do we not scare them off when they come? Because you don't want to invite new folks in and then like they're doing they're being called in to do a lion's share of the work. So a couple of things that we need to do as AHA Central staff is we need to provide better supports for the chapters and affiliates. There will be a lot of trainings that you're going to see, and not the normal education things that you see, because like our Kristen Wintermute does and Emily have done an amazing job of providing education and training through the year. We had 92 trainings last year, or 92 education events last year, which is extremely impressive, like beyond proud of that. But we need to provide some targeted trainings, like how to fundraise. How do you write a grant proposal? How do you find funding so that your chapter can have a bank, so that you can look, you all are, working on, getting a building. How do you do those things? How do you navigate those pieces? How to use social media, how to make a TikTok. I don't know how to make a TikTok. I couldn't help you with that, but there are people on our staff that do know how to do that. So, how do we help you build community where people are? Most folks are on social media in some way, fashion, or form, and that's how they gather a good bit of their information. I know that when I meet someone and someone says, "Oh, I'm Joe Smith from so-and-so organization," the first thing I do when I go sit down is I Google their organization, and I might go look at their website, and then I'll go bookmark it, and if I'm busy, and then go back and look at it later. And so reaching people where they are, which is here in their phones, is going to be really important. So helping to teach our chapters and affiliates how to build community and do movement building that way is going to be really, really important. One of the other things that I have a personal gripe with is that we have no brand standard. We do have a style guide, which is lovely, but there is nothing that ties your chapter to the AHA. Nothing. And other than you all being who you are, with your your tablecloth, your if you've got letterhead or anything like this, there's absolutely nothing that ties us all together. So I'd like to bring all of our chapters and affiliates, maybe a little bit difficult for the affiliates because they tend to be like chapters of other things too, like FFRF or American Atheist. So that may be a little difficult, but for our chapters, I'd love to bring everyone into brand standards where we're all, we all have the same branding. So, Humanists of the Silicon Valley chapter of the American Humanist Association, everyone should have like materials that we provide to you. That affiliate you with us and you with everyone else, so that when they see us in the community, because we're in the community, folks know that it's us doing the work. They know that it's us, helping, and we're a safe place for people to go and to come to when they need help with something. That is super important. That was probably the biggest observation, one of the greatest observations that I had before I started, is we have an optics issue. There are so many people doing so much amazing work, and no one knows about it. No one knows about it because we're not those people. We are humble, and we're kind and quiet, and we do our work, and we go back home. And which is not the ostentatious, hey, video me giving someone a loaf of bread. We're not those people, but there's a version of that we can do that really highlights the amazing work that's happening in our movement. That's highlighting that we are a safe place for the youngest people who are religiously unaffiliated, for them to find community. A lot of the work that I've done in the last 5 years of my life has been in movement building with young people, and I mean really, really young folks. And the way that we speak, and I'm speaking from the AHA's perspective, the way that we speak on our website, the language that we use, it is not attractive to young people. It's not concise. It's not vibrant. It's not bright. It's beautiful, but it's not, it's not really going to attract a lot of folks. So we're currently in the middle of a communications audit, and we're looking at our entire website, and we're going to peel back the layers of all of the information on our website. Our website is way too information heavy, and all of the really important things that people need to find out about us, to find out about you, is buried on our website. So we're looking to tease apart things on our website and put things in the right container and the right shelf in our website, so that when folks come to the website, they know, like, who are we? What do we believe in? Are you a humanist? Are you a person in our community? If you're not, are you a religious humanist? There's a strict definition of who and what a humanist is, and I don't ever want us to lose that. But it's important that we also hold space for religious humanists who may do who might believe in good with their version of a deity. Building coalition is important, and we're not going to be able to get our work done if we don't work with other people. Going back to the website, where can I get involved? Chapters and affiliates. How can I become a celebrant? How can I become a chaplain? How do I give money? How do I get money? Put a pin in that one. That's an important one I'll talk about shortly. But yeah, our information is really, really heavy. It's clunky. It's not bright and eye-catching. So there's a whole communications audit that we're embroiled in at the moment. We expect to be done with it in the next probably 3 months or so. And you will probably see possibly our branding change. Haven't thought about that one yet too deeply, but I'd love to see some texture come into our materials, some bright, like if you look out your window, those bright colors that you see outside, terracotta and green and blue and lovely shades of warm beige. I would love to see our branding change a little bit, still keeping our wonderful happy humanists and still keeping our tagline, which is super bold and grounding. And I don't want us to ever shy away from why we do what we do. We do what we do because we know it's the right thing, not because we're looking for reward or afraid of punishment. We're just good people who want to do good things in the world. But you'll start to see a different look for the AHA, and then you will see that start to extend out. So some of the things I've talked about with regards to branding, my deepest hope is to be able to say, hey, everyone, you have a $350 credit. Please go order your tablecloth, your t-shirts, your table tents, your A-frame, or whatever you need, whatever fits within that little allotment, so that you can get your things and brand with your own chapter information on it, so that folks know who you are, they know who we are, and they know who we are as a larger community. That is going to be really, really important, and you'll probably see that by the end of the year or sometime at the beginning of next. So you heard me say something about money. One of the things I know that is really important is that we need to help support grassroots work. While we have 240 chapters and affiliates, we are not like reproductive justice people. We don't work in the clinics. There are people in our community who do. But we don't work in the clinics. We don't, organize for water rights, for example. We don't try to shut down pipelines. There are organizations who do that work already, and they do it very, very well. There are organizations that, fund reading programs in the community, tutoring programs for kids, that do elder care, that do all kinds of really amazing good work that we know needs to continue to happen, but they're struggling for funding. And I would love for the AHA and for the humanist movement at large to be the place for folks to come when they need help, including our own organizations. There are a lot of humanists who are struggling day to day. They don't, they live in areas where they don't have cars and public transportation is horrible. There are folks who in our own movement who do not have enough to eat every day and every week. And I'm very well aware of that because I've heard some of the chapter leaders tell me that. That they have to be really cognizant of not having their meetups in restaurants because some people can't afford to eat. And so what does it look like to provide, some operating costs to folks in our movement, or have an emergency fund available to chapter members who actually need the help? But also, again, funding work to the tune of, hey, we invite you to apply for a $50,000 operating grant over 2 years. so-and-so grassroots organization. That kind of material help is invaluable to some of those organizations. I met some of our own movement partners. I was at the American Atheist Conference in Atlanta, and one organization in our own community was saying, our operating, if I had $10,000 a year, oh my gosh, the things I could do. $10,000, which is a drop in the bucket compared to our annual budget. But if we can find those funds and raise a social justice, a civil rights, just a humanist service fund and spin that up, that would be the most amazing thing. And I've been working with folks talking about bringing in between $5 and $10 million in order to do that, so that we can become a grant maker as an organization. So giving to our own community and giving to the community at large, the people who are serving each and every day doing the work, even though we may not necessarily be there with our hands and our feet helping. I would hope that we would, but even if we can't, we would be partners in that work if we fund it. So I would love to see the AHA and the humanist movement, kind of extend our tendrils into all kinds of interesting different places, the places that we can't always be, but the places we can help. We're not experts at everything. So I believe in, helping people that are experts at doing their work, helping them do it by giving them the money to do it. So I would love to see us turn into a grant maker. And so there's a bit of shift. There's going to be a bit of shift in the way that we are organized as an AHA central staff to support that work. So that's kind of the current state of things. And I know that was a lot of information. But I'm saying all that to say that, like, I have, taken great pains to ensure that our staff are stable and well supported. And now I'm working on learning from the chapters and the affiliates. What are your issues? What are your challenges? What are your, where are your success points? What would you like to share with other people? How can we help create a platform for you to do so? What could that look like? Because I think that's the other thing that I've heard a lot of as I've been talking with chapter leaders, is that they want to talk. You guys want to talk to each other. Someone goes and they get a grant, $5,000 grant from Home Depot, and it was super easy. They want to share that with everyone, and we don't have a way to do that right now. So how do we create like an online community, a platform where chapters and affiliates and members in general at large can talk to one another and share ideas? How do we better support you if you have all of the credentials? You're a chaplain, you're a celebrant, and you're a member, and you want the humanist.com, and you would like the annual report each year, but you don't want anything else. How do you manage your subscriptions and your preferences? We're working on creating a portal for you all to do that. So there's a lot of things that we're generating internally to ensure that we can provide the supports that you need. What kind of trainings do you want? What do you want to learn about? There's a lot going on, and I think it's important that that our staff are being trained to be able to turn around and train all of you. So there's a lot of preparation that needs to happen in this next year that will still continue to be internal, and then you'll start seeing probably in the next year and a half, you'll start seeing a lot of those things roll out, those extra supports for folks. But we are now starting the analysis of what's happening with the chapters and affiliates. So our communications consultant will be hosting some listening sessions over the summer. And so please do look out for those invitations. And they're open to everyone. They're open to every single chapter and affiliate, all of the members. Please feel free to invite whoever to those listening sessions, because we want to learn from you. We want to hear again, what are your successes? What are your challenges? What do you hope to grow into? And who do you want to see in your chapter? In your wildest dreams, what could success look like for you as a chapter? And how can we help you get there? Because I can't help to build the supports internally. I can't fundraise if I don't know what I'm fundraising against. Where am I trying to get us to? And that's really, really important. So I encourage honesty as much as humanly possible. And then, the other thing that we will be working on that you probably have seen, that is more important that we want to talk about is racial justice is a real thorn in this country's side. It is it's the elephant in every room that nobody ever really wants to talk about. our education department has started a series with the American Ethical Union teaching anti-racism. And when I first saw the announcement, I was like, "Ooh, there are no people of color on this panel. Is this right?" So I quickly called Kristen and Emily, and they were like, "No, no, no. You know, it's white people educating white people. We can't keep asking Black and Indigenous and other POC to come in and educate us." And I was like, "Oh, you needed to say that when you sent out that announcement." Because that was not clear at all. But I fully agree, and that has been my charge for our staff is, you know, where you see racial BS, where you see microaggressions, where you see sexism, where you see misogyny, where you see ableism, call it out, say something, be bold, open your mouth. You know, we're a dignified movement. So I'm seeing, and as I'm meeting people, I think I've identified that many people in our movement are either, it's the exact they're extreme opposites. They're either really, really, really loud, or they're very, very quiet and like kind of clutch my pearls, like, "Oh my, did that just happen?" And I would love us to kind of find a happy medium where we're just saying, "That didn't sound right. Can you explain what you meant when you said that? Because that didn't sound right." You know, like figuring out really artful ways to kind of help folks work through their mess, because we're all a mess. Let's be real. We're all, you know, we all have our moments. But kind of helping people work through some of their challenges and help people get to a better understanding. I know that most people and nearly everyone in our movement, you know, is not malicious and are not racist, but and we are people who live in the world, and we live in a world with people who don't believe the way that we do, who don't live with the kind of integrity that we believe in living with. So like I would encourage everyone to, number one, attend the trainings. They've been great. So please do go. I encourage you to go to those and share them out with people. But also I encourage you to be bold. I'm finding that every time I speak in public, that there's always some incel or some interesting person who has some real silly BS to say about like identity politics, and they use words like social justice warrior, and they're like, "Oh, you know, it's I don't even know how to explain it, but they're terrible. They're terrible people who believe in gaslighting those of us that know right from wrong, into thinking that we don't, and that we're wrong for being progressive people, that we're wrong for, you know, agreeing that everyone should be free in a way that is meaningful to them. It's very the vitriol that comes with, particularly, and it's interesting, young white men. We would think it's older, but it's not. They're millennial, younger white men are railing against like the perceived loss of power and privilege. And the way that they show up in our movement and the way they show up in our spaces is really disrespectful. But it's also really concerning. So as you see people, please continue to, be as gentle as you can be, because, I think people get there from a place of pain. But call out the mess when you see it, and call it out when you hear it. Stand up for folks. I know I don't need to tell you all that. And again, I'm probably, this has got to be a better metaphor, preaching to the choir. We say it all the time. But it stands repeating because we see it all the time. I was on a webinar with Freedom Foundation Beyond Belief, and someone said something, and he was like, "Are you saying that cis het white men are not welcomed in this movement?" And I was like, dude, everything I've said up until this point said the exact opposite of that. I don't know what you're talking about. I literally said everyone is welcome. Like, I literally mean everyone. I want even religious humanists, they're welcome here. We're not going to argue about God here or the lack of God here. We're not going to do that. But if you want to work and you want to be busy and you want to serve, this is the place for you, period. And I was like, dude, you've got to be joking. Like, I cannot believe you would even say that. And I said, there are a bunch of cis het able-bodied white men in this call. I'm certain that they probably don't feel that way. And slowly but surely, folks started chiming in. I don't feel that way. Buddy, you're on your own. Go, I don't know why you think that. That's not what she said. And I was like, see? So sometimes we just have to give people permission to, like, be bold. So, encourage yourself. be bold, and encourage other people to do it. Because it's not, everything is weighing in the balance right now. I mean, again, look at when the judicial system goes, chaos ensues, and we've seen it over and over again when we've seen societies and governments crumble across the world throughout history. Our judiciary it's been under attack for decades. They've been playing the long game, and they're winning, unfortunately. So we have to take a bilateral approach. We have to continue to fight in the courts. We have to continue to fight in our legislative efforts, through policy, enacting good policy that will, help shore up some of the damage. But we've got to support people, and we've got to help where we can help. So that literally means getting out of our houses, putting on our shoes, and going to people. I know it's difficult. I'm not a peopler. We've got to go people, and we've got to go support folks. We've got to roll up our sleeves and go be active wherever we can. So find whatever your cause is and go volunteer, and put on your AHA shirt, put on your humanist shirt, your atheist gear, whatever you have. Let people know who you are, when you're out there, and let them know that we're not the kind of people that are out here, burning babies on a barbecue like like they think we are. We're good and kind people, that believe in service. So go serve, and let folks know who you are and why you're there. There are so many folks that are looking for community, particularly our youngest Americans, who are inherently a very, very diverse group of folks. And I think a lot of them are sitting on the fence with religion. I mean, they're religiously unaffiliated, but it doesn't mean that they're atheists or that they're agnostics. But I think if we're out in the community and we build our reputation in the community, out in the world, I think those folks in particular will find a safe place with us, and they'll find home and community, and they'll find family with us, which is something that they, many of them have been losing. I think this younger crowd are more self-actualized than many of us are. The kids who are queer know that they're queer, and they live out loud from the time that they're in middle school, in the time that they're in high school. A kid in my daughter's middle school came out, a couple of months ago in the classroom. And I was like, what in the world? That is so bold. We couldn't even, when I was in high school, someone brought their boyfriend to prom, and they were expelled from prom. We weren't even allowed to acknowledge sexuality as young people. And these young ones are just as queer and I love it. And they're just as bold about their neurodivergence and their emotional and mental health challenges. They are just self-actualized and honest. They are the humanist movement of the future. And I really, really invite you to help me welcome them and create a place where they are truly welcomed, where they are safe, where they can find home and family, and they can learn about all of the amazing work that you all have been doing for as many years and decades as you've been doing it. They're looking for family, and they're looking for wisdom. And I think they'll find it in our movement. So I will stop talking. And I invite anyone to ask questions or, make statements or whatever. I'd love to engage in a conversation.
All right, that was very interesting, very inspiring. I have to admit, I had trouble communicating outside the group, I guess. I've gone to gallery form. Where are you? There you are.
I do have a question.
How would you recommend getting in touch with younger groups? I mean, call them.
That's a great question. So there are a couple of things that I'm doing on my level of things. I'm hoping to make it a little bit easier for you. I'm working very, very closely with Student Secular Alliance. So the college students. They also have chapters in high school and is in middle school. I didn't know. We have chapters in middle school, of secular kids. But we're working really, really closely with SSA, and also Camp 42 and Camp Quest. I've yet to talk to Amy at Camp 42, but we talked, kind of briefly at at American Atheist Convention. So I will follow up with her shortly, but I did speak with Sarah at Camp Quest. So what I would recommend is hold off and let us pair you with an SSA chapter. And the way I see this working is that an AHA chapter or affiliate would adopt or mentor an SSA chapter because they're everywhere. Kevin Bowling is really working very diligently. He just sent out like 1.4 emails to near a bunch of students at public universities. And he's getting some good feedback from those folks because clearly even the college chapters took a hit during the pandemic. So getting some of the colleges to stand their chapters back up and find kids who will lead that work is the challenge that Kevin is having that I will be helping him with. I attended an HBCU, and it's going to be nearly impossible to get into historically Black colleges and universities, but we're going to work diligently with Black non-believers to see what we can do to get our foot in, get a foothold at HBCU. So you don't necessarily have to reach out to them, just hold off on that, but we'll be working on finding like who's in your local area and here's your contact, and then you will have a direct warm lead. A warm contact that you'll be able to make. So I see it as more of a mentorship and kind of like, hey, let's adopt you. And, so many of the kids are struggling, again, for food and transportation. And a lot of kids don't have a place to go at the holidays either, because, you'd be saddened by how many people kick their kids out if they're queer and won't take care of them, or how many kids are, coming out of the foster system that don't have families. So there, you all can figure out what engagement looks like and find out what the needs are of the SSA chapters and their students are. But I'm working on doing that for you. So just kind of what I would encourage you to do is take as much education as you can to learn how to work with them, because the way young folks speak is very, very different than the way many of us speak. It's confusing. Half the time I'm like, I don't know what these children are saying. What did you say, honey? And they just laugh at me. But
understanding 30-year-olds, yeah.
Yeah. So the little ones are even more confusing. They use different language.
Yeah, George has his hand up.
Oh, yeah, George.
Yes. I'd like you to tell us about AHA plans with regard to the Establishment Clause and defending the separation of church and state.
I'm sorry, say that again, George.
Could you tell us the AHA's plans or what you're currently working on with respect to the Establishment Clause and defending the separation of church and state?
Yeah, so we're currently, Monica Miller was just in the 11th Circuit arguing for the case in Ocala, Florida. We are facing an interesting challenge in the next year. At the SCA meeting, we heard from all of our attorneys for all of the secular organizations. There was a panel with all of the attorneys. And I think the general consensus is that we're going to end up losing more than we're winning because the courts are more conservative than they have been in many in the past few decades. So we're going to end up losing more than we're winning. The recommendation is that we change the approach to move away from the Establishment Clause and move to the 14th, which is equal protection under the law. And there are very clear violations of that that we can see. So we need to change our argument and strategy. So that's what I think is going to happen, is that we're going to end up, changing our approach. What we're hearing, I don't know if you have the time, I would encourage you to go to the 11th Circuit in Alabama and listen to the oral arguments that were made by the attorney for the city of Ocala and Monica. And it was absolutely infuriating to listen to it. They would not let Monica finish her statements, but the attorney kept leaning into, and you're going to hear this phrase come up more and more: history and tradition, which is the argument that they're making over with Roe. It was not originally in the framers' constitution. So because it was not explicit, a woman doesn't have a right to choose. Insert the cause. It was not in the Constitution. It was nothing of great modern day worth. It was in the Constitution. The Constitution evolves to suit society. so this is what this is what the other side is leaning into, history and tradition, and that's what you'll hear them say a lot of. So we're going to need to change our approach, and so we're all of the attorneys are kind of putting their heads together to figure out a better strategy. I'm hoping that we'll continue to work with Americans United and and FFRF and American Atheists, and to change our position, or figure out a better way to argue. But we're pretty certain that for the next year or two, we're going to end up losing more than we're winning.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and Ray, you asked a question earlier about nuclear. I don't know yet. I'll find out. We'll figure out what our position is on that. I think I agree with you in that nuclear is clean. The issue is that, like, what happens to the cooling rods afterwards, and it's not clean. It's like 6 in one hand, half dozen in the other. It's a difficult position.
Can I send you a link to some information on the topic?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I will absolutely read through.
I will put that in the chat.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Ray. Thank you.
We've had speakers from Camp Quest. What is Camp 42?
Same thing. It's in the Southeast. They were a part of Camp Quest for a while, and there was an administrative issue that they had with Camp Quest. It was not a big fundamental thing with regards to how they were hosting the camp, or there was no injury or ethical violations. They just had a squabble over, I think, camp fees. Something very simple, but nonetheless, Camp 42 broke off. So it's almost all of the camps in the southeast part of the U.S. So it's kind of like Camp Quest, but it's Camp 42 in the southeast.
Okay. Yeah, it was interesting when you spoke about providing a young place for young unbelievers. I hadn't really thought of that. Well, I have, in the sense that I've been an unbeliever for most of my life. I'm old enough to remember when they added "under God" to the pledge.
Ooh. Oof.
Yeah.
It's been there my whole life. So
yeah. I thought it kind of ruined the rhythm of it, the poetry. Mm-hmm. Cheryl, you got your hand up?
Yes. Good afternoon, Nadia. Thank you for that very detailed description of what you're trying to get the AHA to move towards. You mentioned the most dangerous other organization is white Christian nationalism. I think I got that down right.
Correct.
So I'm sure you're familiar with the Poor People's Campaign.
Yes.
And the June 18th March on Washington. And
I don't think I heard about the march.
The June 18th. Oh, yes.
Making a note.
They're bussing people in. This is to show the world the demands of the Poor People's Campaign. Mm. And they are welcoming other organizations to join them. And so you'll see on my name, that's the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, which is where I spend most of my volunteer activities. And so we are one of the partner organizations of the Poor People's Campaign. And although it has its roots in religion, and they are against the white Christian nationalism type of religion. Right. So I would say, as you are based in DC, which is where this march will happen on the mall, that you investigate, how to join in and send a delegation to march in that. You're allowed to march with your own signs.
Yeah.
And so if you want a presence there, the Willful have a presence, the Peace Movement is going to have a presence, and many other organizations that partner. And that's poorpeoplescampaign.org, I believe. Okay. I'll put it in the chat. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that, Cheryl. I will absolutely organize our staff. And then we've got a bunch of chapters and affiliates that are local to us here or within driving distance. So if we could get a good contingent, and this is enough time that we have to ask for folks to join. Thank you so much for that.
There is an organization that will organize buses for you from, there's a map that shows, it's amazing. There's a map that shows 200 places where you could get on a bus to get to this march. Nice. Even in San Francisco, they haven't got enough people to run the bus, but you could, if you get 40 people who want to go on a bus from San Francisco to DC, you all in this meeting, you could do that. I think it'll be cheaper to fly actually in time. So anyway, so it is a big organization that the AHA should, have some relationship with. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much for that, Cheryl. I will definitely reach out, and I have like a loose connection to Reverend Barber, his son actually. So I will absolutely reach out. Thank you so much for that. I will be on the agenda first thing tomorrow morning.
Okay,
Thank you again, Michael.
Yeah, I have a broad question to you. What is humanism for you?
For me,
from your words, one impression is, so I have a sort of like conflicting impressions from what you said. It looks like you see humanism as a part of this social activism, mostly affiliated with the left in our political taxonomy. But at the same time, if the main value of humanism is concerned about civil rights, or maybe better said for human rights, it could be a broader movement that would try to overcome our political divisions and strive for more unity. And you mentioned that even religious humanists are welcome. So I'm trying to understand how humanism positions itself in our political or ideological mosaic.
So for me, I can speak for myself. To me, humanism is the space for atheists and agnostics and those who are non-religious. It is a place for us to exist and build community with one another and to build the future that we need and want to separate ourselves from government in particular, and from religion in particular. My version of humanism is one that is active. It is rooted in service. So if I'm not serving, I'm not for me, I'm not a good humanist. It needs to have teeth and it needs to have action. For a long time, I've looked at the arc of humanism in this country. I can't speak for it. Like the Scandinavian countries are totally different than we are. They do humanism in a more integrated form. It's very, very integrated in everything that they do. Even their public education is grounded in humanism. In this country, it is not. But at some point in time, we at the inception of humanism in this country, humanists were the first people on the front lines for social justice, for civil rights, for human rights. And right around the time that the moral majority came around, the family first people, the religious right, started gaining strength in the 80s. Humanism shifted a bit to becoming more argumentative and more intellectual, and got away from the roots of activism that had always been a part of this movement. And so what I am trying to do at this moment is to get us back to the activist roots, but not losing the political cash that's necessary to codify social and human rights for people. Because if it's not written into law, then anyone can do whatever they want to do. And I mean, honestly, most people don't give a crap about the law. But at least this way, if we have things that are codified in policies, there is budget that's allocated to support policies. So there's teeth to that. So we've got to do a healthy serving of both. When you heard me talk about religious humanists, I mean to work with them in coalition, not as they are not true humanists. Humanists are people who do not believe in the supernatural. So this is our space, and it is our safe space to do the things that we need to do for people and for people in a very grassroots sense, and that we need to do politically, the work that we need to do politically. But we can sit in coalition with anyone who wants to do the same work, who is mission aligned, who is values aligned according to what human rights looks like. They may sit in coalition with us, but they are not true humanists. So there's a difference in that. There are religious people who are humanists, but they're not true humanists in a sense. So I don't want us to lose, and here we go with the religious references, but I don't want us to lose the soul of who and what we are. What we are is a group of people who believe in nothing supernatural, and that there's no intervention, and that unless we do the work, unless we say the thing, do the thing, it's not going to happen for us. It's up to us to do it. So did that answer your question, Michael? Hopefully I clarified that for you a little?
Yeah, sort of. Although I feel a little uncomfortable that I am not religious myself and never was, but if I were religious, then I would not be welcomed in humanist community, right?
No. That's what I'm saying. We can sit. That's what I'm saying. We can sit in coalition.
So I am not a true humanist in your words, right? Even if I believe in all the same things, except that maybe.
So we call them religious humanists because they are still humanists in principle. We diverge on the reason we do the work. So we do good without a God. They do it with. Our reason for doing the work is personal, and it is private the way that it should be. But if we're going to do the same work together, everyone is welcome to do the work together. So I don't want to say that, but I also don't want us to be everything to everyone. We can't be. We can't be everything to everyone. This is a community for non-religious people. In particular, that is why it was founded. Actually, it was not founded. It was founded to mimic Christianity. But hey, I digress. We've moved away from that, and this is a community of non-religious people. And we need to keep it a safe place for people to just be themselves without any form of judgment. We don't do that. And it's really, really difficult to, as people are trying to leave organized religion, the toxicity of organized religion, that they're able to do so in a place that doesn't have it around. So it's not that they're not humanists in a very, very broad sense, but in a very, very specific sense, they're not, because we're very explicit about not believing in the supernatural. But again, if our reasons are diverging, not the fact that we are mission aligned or values aligned.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Jem?
Sam.
Yeah, thank you again for being here. Welcome to the humanist community. I was listening to the different issues that you hope that the AHA will tackle: environmental justice, social justice, racial justice, and all of those are laudable things, but it doesn't, or they don't really differentiate humanists. I mean, you sound like a progressive liberal organization, which is fine, but there's nothing specifically humanist. Like, I think, as you mentioned, the humanism in our definition, and I guess there are like 6 or 7 definitions of humanism. But what you said about atheism, about non-belief in the supernatural, that's sort of what differentiates us. What you mentioned is, like I said, laudable, but it's basically sort of a progressive menu of things, and there are many organizations like that we could unite with, right? So I kind of feel that we're not differentiating ourselves, and we become kind of bland. We become another, I don't know, names escape me, because right now, if I think of the separation of church and state, I don't think of the American Humanist Association. I think of the ACLU.
Mhm.
They are the number one, proponent and fighter on that, in that space. I also had a side question about Ocala, Florida. I was surprised that they were not involved. At least I could not find on the internet any suggestion that they would be involved. I thought that's in their wheelhouse. I don't know what happened. I'm just curious. But you know what I mean? What you're proposing is all laudable, but it doesn't differentiate us from other groups, other progressive liberal groups. So
Right. I appreciate that, Sam. I think what does differentiate us is when people see good without a God, it's very, very clear what our position is. And the fact that, that people, that is what differentiates. That's why I was saying about branding. That is why we need to let it speak for us, as well as our actions. We need to let our actions speak for us. We are not doing a good job of talking about humanism in the world. People don't know what it is. They don't know, not even just the AHA, just in general, people don't know what humanism is. If you say non-religious, people understand what non-religious means. They, secular. Some people, understand what secular means, but when you say humanist, it's like, oh my, and it's so broad. The idea of humanism is so broad. So again, the optics issue that we have as a movement is trying to gain clarity so that we can narrow it down into something that's a little bit more fine-tuned and that's really, really specific. In that if you are a person who, believes in human rights, if you are a person who, wants to actually serve people, and you do not want to, and whether you, and you don't think you believe in God, we're probably the place for you. There is still, in certain communities, there's still a palpable fear of coming out as an atheist or as an agnostic. I mean, when I took this job, I was like, ooh, I'm going to lose a bunch of friends. And thankfully I didn't. I mean, I don't think anybody clicked the link to the AHA website. I was like, oh, good. But I don't think a lot of people don't know I'm an atheist. They don't know that I'm a humanist. They have no idea. And so, being really bold about good without a God, front and center, we are doing this good work because we believe in altruism. We do good things because they're the right thing to do. And if that's the kind of work you want to do, you can join us. And I think, again, sitting in coalition, but ensuring that we're creating a really, really solid container for those of us that are atheist and agnostic, that are non-religious altogether, so that we have a safe space where we're not having to argue about our personal perspectives on theism. This is not why we're here. We're here to sit in community with one another and have peace and family, and have a good time and, celebrate and work hard together. And so that is the work that I have in front of me, is to clarify and to define that, because it's all over the place right now.
Right.
I agree with you. Ray, you have a hand up again.
Yes, I'd like to hear a little bit more about your feelings on the word religion. You stated that humanism is a way to separate ourselves from religion, and yet it is very clearly defined that the American Humanist Association and the humanist community here in Silicon Valley are religious organizations. Do you see this conflict, and do you see any path forward to eliminate the word religion from what kind of organizations we are?
Yeah, I mean, we're religious for tax purposes. And that's really it, honestly. That's the only reason that I see, because that was confusing to me when I was coming on board. I was like, I'm sorry, did you say religious? We're not religious people. Why is this the thing? And it's because we have chaplains, and it's because we have celebrants. Those are the only, per IRS tax code, that's the only way that we can actually encourage people to do those and have them written off, and give them the latitude that they need to do in order to do that kind of work. And so we have to have that religious exemption, even though we're not religious people. I mean, Buddhism is not a religion; it's philosophy, but they're considered a religion. There are some kinds that are religious-ish, but like Zen Buddhists are not religious. That's not,
And yet there are many nonprofit organizations that are tax exempt organizations. that aren't religions? Why can't humanism become more like that?
It's specifically because of what I just said, because we have celebrants and we have chaplains. And it's the only way that we can do that is by having the religious exemption.
Can we provide those same services in some way by changing the term chaplain to something less religious?
I don't know. Let me find out. I don't know. I honestly don't know. It's my understanding that in order for us to operate in a nonprofit status, to have the things that the chaplains and celebrants do, it has to have that religious exemption. But let me find out. I don't know if there's a way around it.
Yet things like performing marriages can be done by, the captain of a ship or a justice of the peace that have nothing to do with religion.
Right. Well,
I don't know the answers either, but
yeah.
I'm bringing it up as something to be thought about and discussed, at the higher levels of the AHA.
Yeah, this would be an issue with lawyers and the IRS. It's not us. It's not us. It's the IRS. And this is I don't know how we change IRS rules.
The AHA has lawyers, and maybe they can figure it out if there's some impetus to do that.
Religious exemption. I'm making notes here, Ray.
I don't know the answers, but it's something that's bothered me from the time I got involved in humanism. I was raised in a Lutheran family and followed those traditions into early adulthood, but I can't say that I actually ever really believed in God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let me find out. Like I said, I was totally confused when I came on board and I found out that our IRS tax status in Minnesota is what allows us to do that, to have this, to be able to have chaplains and celebrants. And I was totally confused too. So let me find out. That's a good question, Ray. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Alex.
Yeah, okay. I want to say a few things. One is that I don't worry about the word religion. I don't take it seriously. And that's not quite right either. But as for humanism, I figure humanism is strictly an ethical stand based on respect for other people. And I'd say in many respects, the Catholic Church is somewhat humanistic. It's got a lot of humanistic values. Most people do. They might not recognize that in themselves, that they might not recognize that that's a good term to describe what they're doing, but I think it is. And I think we should probably make it clear that that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the problems is we're trying to attract new members into our way of thinking. And I think that a lot of potential new members are turned off by thinking that, oh, that's just another religion.
Mm-hmm.
So the term is problematic.
Yeah, I don't get that from the folks that the young folks I talk to. I don't think that is actually the concern. I think the concern that I get from them is that we're not active enough, and that we're not necessarily living humanism as much as we should be. And that's the general tone that I've gotten from young people I've talked to. It doesn't really have anything to do with religion. I think we all understand technicalities. There's a loophole for everything. And it's the right takes advantage of many loopholes that are meant to do good things, and they do evil with the loopholes. So why can we not take advantage of some of them? And I think that's kind of the whatever, it's not a big deal. I don't think it's really that, but that's still a good question though. And I will ask about it though. I am curious about about figuring out if there's a way around that, or why we do it and why we do it to the degree that we do. Greg, I love your question. Can humanism be a religion based on evidence rather than faith? Tell me more. That sounds like an interesting concept.
We had a member who founded the Church of Reason.
Oh.
I'm making another comment I was going to make. Is that I think America is a little unusual in that it's got states which each have their own laws and their own way of defining things.
Right.
It makes it difficult. Zem, you see your hands up again.
Yeah, I just want to follow sort of up on what Ray was asking. And that is the question of political activism. I don't know what the AHA's plans/opinions are on the subject. I know that we are a 501c3 organization. We're also a church, technically, but there is a limitation apparently of not participating, politically on behalf of candidates, for example. So there are sort of limitations on speech that you have to agree to in order to claim tax exempt status. And I wonder if there, maybe it's also, along the lines of Ray's question, what the legal situation is like. Can you be a nonprofit and at the same time be political? I mean, I think of ACLU as being political. Maybe I'm wrong. But I guess they are a nonprofit, right? I didn't look into it.
They are.
So that's that whole angle of political engagement.
Right. Yeah, and we can. So the Center for Free Thought Equality is a 501c4, and so we can lobby through them. We also have a political action committee, which means that we actually financially support candidates. All of it is under the umbrella of the AHA. So there are ways to be more politically active through CFE, right? So I would encourage, if anyone is interested in really digging into that, please go to the CFE annual meeting at the AHA meeting. The meetings are both virtual this year. They're June 25th, 26th of this year. In order for you to gain membership in CFE is free, but you have to attend the annual meeting. So please encourage anyone that that is, even young people who may not know which end is up. If they're interested somewhat in running for office or learning more about the secular free thought political landscape, please encourage them to join the CFE annual meeting, and it's open to whoever wants to attend it. But once you
drop
attend,
the link in the chat if you have it.
Sure, let me look for it.
Well, it's great that we have a PAC. I wasn't aware of that, so that's good. That's very good.
I'm the executive director of that too.
Oh, really? Okay.
I'm gonna see that. Yeah. Hang on one second. My child is screaming. Hang on one. Sorry.
And what does CFE stand for?
Center for Free Thought Equality. And we are also, Roy was worked really, really diligently in creating the Congressional Free Thought Caucus. So we have people in Congress who have identified as secular or free thinkers. Not many of them have come out as atheists or agnostics. Certainly not atheists. I think honestly, Jamie Raskin probably would, but his mother is still alive, and they're Jewish by tradition. And so I think once, not that I wish death on Jamie's mother, but I think whenever that time comes, Jamie probably will step into stating openly being an atheist. But we look for candidates who are progressive and who we have a survey that we send out to candidates as Ron Millard does all of this work. He finds candidates across the country and will send out a survey. And if they score 100 on the survey, then they are candidates that we will support in small amounts. But it has to be done through the PAC and not even through CFE. It's so complicated. It's so complicated. It's literally this chicken and egg thing. That's why I'm please come to the meeting, because the more people that comes to meetings, the more we can, we have a greater membership in CFE. But we also are able to get more input on candidates we should be looking out for. So if there are people that you've got a cousin that lives in Albuquerque and of a local person who's running for a thing, you can say, hey, Ron, this person who I know is an atheist, who I know is a humanist, is running for this office. Can we support them? And I mean, it's small amounts, like $500, $1,000, but it's all helpful and meaningful. We've got to get more, and that's part of the effort that we need to mount as a movement. Is we need more progressive, free-thinking people to join the political movement in local places. So join the school board, join your city council, get on the Park and Recreation Board, all of the little things, because the right has been doing it and they're taking over from the grassroots. And we've got to like shift, and we've got to start supporting our own candidates, but identifying those opportunities to do so.
Thank you.
Center. Sophie, please stop. Honey, not right now. I'm sorry. Okay, so here is our.
I had a question about something you said before about watching what's going on at the Alabama 11th Circuit. Is that something we just go to online?
Yeah, and if not, Monica emailed me the link. I can probably send it to you, Zem, if you want to send it to the rest of the chapter.
Okay.
Yeah, Monica emailed them to us earlier in the week, and I was listening to it, and I made the mistake of like going to take a shower. I'm listening to it while I'm in the shower, screaming. I'm like, let her finish. The judge literally kept cutting Monica off over and over again. She could not get anything. It was disgusting. But they kept, the attorney kept leaning into this history and tradition thing. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, when the Constitution was written, we were 3/5 of a human. Like, that's really what we're going back to. This is what we're talking about. Like, the history and tradition is a reference point. It is not a place that we should be aspiring to. We're going, these folks want to take us into like a regression, like this regressive society. Excuse me, go away. Bye-bye. But yeah, it's like we're regressing. It's horrifying what's happening right now. So I dropped the CFE link in.
Yeah, I see it. Yeah, thank you. It seems like the religious right is really being used by the Republican Party. I mean, they just care about tax cuts for the rich, and they co-opt religious people as their sheep. I look at other countries like Viktor Orban, who is co-opting the Hungarian religion. And of course, the most funny example is Putin, who is an atheistic KGB officer, but yet he is really close to the Russian Orthodox Church because that's his base of support, right? So it's maybe a lot of these people don't even, they're just pawns. They're
right. Right. I mean, it's a horrible thing to say, but I mean, the phrase "useful idiots," and they're clearly not idiots. Yeah. They're decent and trying to be decent people. But it's honestly, I think at some point they've converged into like the sycophantic kind of one mind, kind of like the Borg. Like this collective of people. And as I'm reading Andrew's book, Founding Myths, he talks about that, like the fact that they are now one and the same. And it's, and when we look at the places in history where that confluence has happened, where government, where conservative government and or where conservatives in general merge with religion, horrible things happen behind it. And we know that, just from looking at history, imagine that, just regular old history. But it's seeing it here, particularly when the idea of America was founded as a Christian nation, which we know is absolute BS. The framers were adamant about it not being that, because they saw what in England, when the two things marry, it's horrible. Yes, that book, Founding Myth. It's really, really good. I encourage you to read it. I'm supposed to be meeting with Andrew probably in the next week or two. We will probably be hosting a panel on this at the annual conference, so please come. We're working on getting Anthea Butler to join us also for that. And there's an organization called, oh gosh, Christians Against Christian Nationalists.org. Like, I was like, you need to get a smaller name, people. But it's Christians Against Christian Nationalism.org. And I'm wondering, I just got that information earlier this week, so I'd like to reach out to them to see if they might want to join our panel. I would be really interested to hear from religious people about like their perspectives on these rabid, crazy folk. I mean, I know that I don't want to deride, people with mental health issues, but oh goodness gracious, January 6th has, I think we've, like many of us have known, that this is the case, but I think seeing it on full display was just absolutely horrifying. for most people, like what in the heck is going on, and to know that there was loss of life on property from the woman who got shot and then the officers who were there. And I'm like, I thought you people were pro law enforcement. What happened? It was just disgusting on so many levels and terrifying to watch. But you know, I don't know. So we just know that this is a huge hurdle that we're going to have to climb, and we've got to take a couple of approaches to this, and it can't just be like rah policies and law. We've got to help people. We've got to shore up our communities and support one another.
I have one more question, but maybe I shouldn't monopolize the conversation. So if anyone else has a question. No? Okay. I guess this is a question that, is asked of numerous movements. Humanists are not unique in this, but why do you think our movement is so fragmented? I mean, how many organizations we have? We have FFRF, we have Atheists United, we have, just Google it and you'll see like a plethora of organizations, which can't be good politically. Do you think that there is a chance that they will unite in some way?
Well, that's the point of Secular Coalition for America, is for us to do that. And I was really, really pleased at the heads meeting. It was in March. I hate that it's called the heads meeting because it sounds really weird, but it's the leaders of all of the organizations, the 17 organizations, secular organizations in the country. So here's a couple of things. I was pleased to see everyone there. I was pleased to hear that we're all kind of on the same page. Not all of us, but most of us are on the same page that we need to be really leaning into human rights, particularly civil rights in this country, that we need to, again, shore up people, but really, really take the fight politically in the legislature and in the courtroom. So we all we agree on tactics, which is a plus. The issue that we have is that and I say this all the time about just progressive people in general, we are so idealistic and we need everything to be perfect to the letter before we do anything, which leaves us in paralysis. So we are like, let the enemy, perfection be the enemy of the good, and you'll see the humanist movement. That's us. And we've got to cut that out. I think, this is why, like, particularly with our staff, we're leaning in on 2 to 3 lanes. Let's all face in the same direction. Let's at least go in the same direction, and let's attack 2 to 3 things together. And then once we get that underway and it's chugging along, then we can jump ship and get to another thing. We're too idealistic, and that is part of the issue. But I will say we are much more collaborative than we've been. So, like, we're hosting our lobby day with American Atheists. There are 4 organizations that are working. We're putting in a bid to host the Humanist World Congress here in the U.S. in 2026. I don't think that people have seen the level of cooperation that we have with one another. We have lawyers from FFRF, from Atheists United, or American Atheists, and then AHA. So 4 female lawyers who are doing a podcast together. We are doing so much more collaboration than we've done previously.
That's great.
So, like, we've got to get out of our own way. That's the problem, is that our idealism is too large, and we need to just simply find our points of confluence and partner together. And then the things where we diverge, you do your thing, you do your thing and you do it well. We do our thing and we do it well. We can diverge and continue to build our base, in ways that are meaningful to each of our organizations. But where we have commonalities, we've got to partner, and we are working on doing more of that.
We've also done a little bit locally by trying to list each other's events, the atheist community in San Jose, ACSJ.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we just proposed the same thing because SCA does have a calendar. Nobody uses it. So one of the things, like, we as AHA, we don't even have an internal communications calendar. So there's nowhere for someone who works in like the person who answers our phones, for example, our member services assistant, there's no way that she knows why someone is calling, because she has no idea what campaigns are going on, who we're partnering it with, what the next event is. She has no clue about any of those things. So internally, we're creating our own internal communications calendar that we will then in turn put on the SCA calendar. And so all of the organizations need to be doing that. We need to be doing more, like if we're having a slow media day, there's no reason I can't go over and say, hey, see what FFRF is doing and post out what they're doing. Holler at CFI and see if there's something that we can do together, or what's happening with so and so. Weren't they supposed to have an action? Is there an action item that we can support and send out to our movement? We need to be doing more of that work together, and we're not doing it. But we are absolutely getting on the same page, and I think that's important to note.
Okay, I think part of our problem is we develop habits. It's hard to do something truly different. Hard to reach out to someone else.
Right.
I wanted to ask you also, after the AHA last year's AHA conference, for a while I was trying to access some of the talks, and I had some trouble doing that. But I just want to make sure, are they still available? Last year's I
think they're available on YouTube. That's where I got them. I didn't get them from our website. When I started, someone sent them to me. So they were like, hey, look at our conference. So I had to actually watch the conference on YouTube. So they're on YouTube. So you should be able to find them there. And if not, I will look and see if I have like the email that was given to me, and I'll just forward it to you. But we are working on ensuring that like our content remains evergreen and available to folks. At least someplace. We, even if it's in an archive, we'll archive things so that we can, again, declutter our website. Our website is like a 200-year-old house. There's like wallpaper and paint and wallpaper. It's lead paint, wallpaper. So we've got to start pulling up these layers of things. But one of the things we did agree is that we need to keep a lot of things in perpetuity, but we need to archive them and put them away from the website. But I think that they're available, so you should be able to find them on YouTube. Okay. Oh, thank you for the link, Cheryl. I appreciate it. Putting that with the rest of my notes here.
I feel to an extent that a lot of the appeal of religion is just the ceremony. No, we don't do that. Well, we don't do that at all. I think that, and it's a problem with us in that so many of us are just uncomfortable with anything that feels like a church.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had a conversation in January with Art Jackson. Lovely conversation. He was adorable, and I wanted to just take him through the phone and like put him in my pocket. He was just the sweetest man. And I think one of the things that really sat with me is when he said, I want you to work on helping us figure out what our traditions are. And that's really powerful. Traditions, not religion, but like traditions. What are the things that are science-based? What are the things that are reason-based that we can build community around and build traditions around? And thinking about that, like the fact that we recognize that, Safia, please, baby, please. Thank you. Sorry. The fact that we loosely celebrate the solstices, for example. Why don't we do something more fun and celebratory around those things? I think that there at some point, from what I hear, there was a book of ceremonies of some sort for our chaplains. And for celebrants. And I don't know what happened to that. Someone just mentioned it. I was like, do we have something like that? And someone was like, yeah, there is something. I don't know where it is, but I think we're going to revisit that and just find, I think what we don't want to do is be so prescriptive with the ceremonial things that we do, because the point of doing it is that it's for the people who are there. We look at the actual individuals, the people who are in front of us, and we celebrate them in a way that's meaningful to them. But yeah, we'll have to figure that out a little bit. We would love to hear from folks and in ways that you like to celebrate, and, how we can create traditions that are uniquely ours. Paul.
I just want to make sure we get this as a simple thing, but our meeting is coming up in what, 24, 25, something like that. If we could put into the chat a simple way to register for that and make sure that we get it out to all of our members. It's so easy now to attend and participate in these things, and to really, really promote it would be worthwhile in the long run, I think.
Not a problem. I don't know if we have registration open yet. Let me check with Nicole and see when we will open registration. It will probably be really, really soon, because we're also doing lobby day right before it. I should mention to you all, with American Atheist. It's every child should have a home. I believe that's what we're doing. So supporting legislation that allows anyone to adopt children, regardless of sexual orientation, family status, religion, so on and so forth, because we know that we're being, discriminated against, and many families are being discriminated against because they're not Christian, for example. So that's the topic of our lobby day. But as soon as I'll see when we're going to open registration, and I'll be sure that we send that out. I don't think it's open yet, though.
Yeah, I think for a lot of us here, it's hard to realize sometimes that there's discrimination against Christians, because this area is so basically everybody's an engineer. And
Believe in nothing.
yeah, pretty much.
Right. I think there was a really interesting case just now where a Jewish couple was not allowed to adopt. In a heterosexual Jewish couple in Tennessee was not allowed to adopt. So there's a lawsuit happening right now with that. I think it was a Catholic. It might have been a Catholic or a Christian adoption home or something service. Oops. But yeah, there's a lot happening out there.
Well, I'm looking forward to contact you. Said you'd be able to send us.
Yep. Thank you so much. I will let you know when we make some headway with SSA. The school year is coming to a close, and we will be giving a free membership to the graduates, so that we can draw stronger lines between SSA and AHA. When the kids graduate from university, they can turn around and become members. So we're going to give them a complimentary 1-year membership to the AHA. So hopefully that will be a really nice step in community building. But I will let you know as soon as I have some headway with SSA in their active chapters. It will probably be closer to the fall.